Hey, Joyful Journeyers. Anita Adams here, your host of the Joyful Journey podcast. And today I'm so pleased to introduce you to Catherine Gourdier. Shoot, I need to stop. I wanted to make sure I'm saying your last name properly.
It's Gourdier.
Okay,
And,
Gourdier.
and if you, I don't think you say, but my mother's name is Nita, not like.
I don't mention her name. Yeah.
Not Netta. Yeah.
Okay. Catherine Gourdier. Gourdier. Okay. Pardon me. Hey, Joyful Journeyers, Anita Adams here, your host of the Joyful Journey podcast. And today I'm so pleased to introduce you to Catherine Gourdier, a powerhouse woman who I've known as an assistant director, producer, and writer in the film industry. Catherine is also the author of a gripping book, Breathe, Cry, Breathe, in which she shares her personal journey through grief as she comes to terms with the traumatic loss of 3 close family members. I invited Catherine to be on our show because joy is not the absence of sorrow, and the way through our pain is to embrace it. In Catherine's words, grief doesn't vanish quickly. It packs a suitcase and moves into your heart and your head. In the last chapter of her book, she so eloquently says, when you can find the strength to open your heart, you just may find some blessings on the other side of the mourning. Today, we are going to talk about moving through grief, opening your heart, and finding the blessings. Welcome, Catherine. I want to thank you for writing such a raw and honest account of this time in your life and to acknowledge the bravery that it took in bringing this story forward. It seems you don't hide anything, even your messiness and sometimes less than attractive behaviors. It feels very raw and authentic. And I really believe your book will help many find strength in the aftermath of their loss. So again, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Catherine, why don't we start with you sharing what happened on that fateful night in November of 2009?
Okay, it was the night of my youngest sister's surprise birthday party. I also just want to mention I'm the eldest of 8. So this tragedy not only affected me, but all of my siblings and 16 nieces and nephews on my side of the family alone. So we were gathered in zombie costumes for this horror-themed surprise birthday party for my sister Julie. And I literally was putting the finishing touches of blood dripping down my sister's neck when the phone rang and my sister-in-law answered, and we found out my mother had been hit by a car while walking home from church. And in full zombie attire, my husband and I dashed out to the accident site, only to find out once we arrived that my sister Julie had also been struck. The ambulances were gone, and we went to the hospital where we found out my mother had died. And Julie was so severely brain damaged that we had to say goodbye to her the next day. So the surprise party turned out to be a real bad surprise.
Yeah, there are no words for something like that, and I can't even imagine the horror and the pain and everything that you and your family had to go through during that time. And I know that from your book, your father died shortly after, and I think you say in your book you believe he died from a heartbreak,
broken heart. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is real, and I researched that, and there is a piece on broken heart syndrome in the book as well.
Yeah. In your book, you acknowledge that the healing journey is very different for everyone and that everyone must find their own way. And along your journey, you discover that there are 5 different types of griever identities. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know you've written some stuff about this. Maybe we can share with our audience what those 5 identities are. That might help people that are going through their own grief.
Well, I'd like to say that I wrote this, but I found this on Google. Google is, oh my God, like everybody's friend, isn't it? I don't know what I was Googling in particular that day, but I came across this article written by Dr. Susan Berger explaining the 5 different types of grievers. So one is a nomad. This type are in denial and they run from their grief. An example of that would be a friend of mine whose husband died suddenly a few years ago, and she's been traveling nonstop since, and has recently, she read my book about 3 months ago, and reading that, she realized that's what she was doing. She wasn't dealing with her grief. I stepped into the pain. She was traveling, trying to just take her mind off of it. Can't run from it. Number 2 is a seeker. A seeker incorporates religion and spirituality into their lives to help them deal with their grief. Number 3, a normalizer, focuses on recreating a sense of family. For example, if you lost a child, you might want to spend more time with a niece and nephew to try to help you fill the void. Number 4, a memorialist. This type is committed to keeping the memory of their loved one alive. A well-known example of this would be the Terry Fox run, but you don't have to go that big. I've done 7 fundraisers for Special Olympics Kingston since Julie died, all in her memory. I've done a huge one. The first one was a huge one, $300 tickets, 350 guests or more, you know, in big downtown Toronto. And I've also done house parties. And I had a birthday party at my house, and I said, in lieu of a gift, please bring a donation in memory of Julie for Special Olympics. And raised, just a simple house party, raised over $2,000, which enabled them to buy new team uniforms for the athletes. So, number 5 is an activist. An activist takes the focus off their own grief by helping others, usually by getting involved with an organization within their community, or as I did, or getting involved with something that had to do with your loved one or how they died. So as an example, I tried to get a crosswalk built at the accident site. And the other thing I did was bring awareness to the elderly seniors driving tests to, I don't know if most people are aware, but you don't have to get in the car for a driving test. From the time you get your license at 17 years old till whenever it is, you don't drive anymore. You could be 95 and never have to get in the car again. So I was trying to promote awareness for that as well, which I was a guest on the 16:9 show, promoting that. So, but you could just find something that touches you, that's relating to your loved one.
Right.
And to keep busy. It's good to do something that is good for somebody else, to keep busy.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like you've kind of done all but maybe the nomad, actually, because I know that you have been a seeker from some of this, and we'll get into that a little bit. Normalizer, would you fall in that category at all?
I met one of Julie's friends, and at first I thought, I'm going to, include her more in my life. Maybe I'll invite her to the cottage or something. And then I realized, it was too soon.
Yeah.
And, and she wasn't Julie.
Right.
She wasn't my family. And she ended up moving out to Calgary. So I couldn't, but I immediately did. I went, I need somebody else to focus on.
Right.
And, I called my mom every weekend since I moved from home at 18 years old. And so I started calling my Aunt Joan every weekend.
As a replacement.
So,
Right.
so that
Yeah.
would be kind of the normalizing, is trying to
Yeah.
pay attention somewhere else.
Yeah. And then the immoralist, I guess holding on to possessions and maybe creating shrines and things like that. Would that be an example of?
Yes, I also did I made a beautiful Julie collage,
Yes.
vacation at the lake.
Yeah.
And some people write a song.
And you wrote a poem.
And I wrote a poem.
Yeah. So beautiful.
It's just simple, because you feel, I could feel her voice.
Mhm.
Like she would get it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Uh, and what a beautiful way to work through your grief, actually, is to do these things, and to find connection, and then the last one, the activist, like that. I guess that, because you became very active in many areas, and we'll come back to that a little bit more with some calls to actions that we can leave our guests with if they feel so inspired. I imagine throwing yourself into a lot of this work would help alleviate the pain.
Oh, absolutely. But
Yeah.
again, also, perhaps being an activist wouldn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
I'll go back to saying I'm the eldest of 8, if I didn't say I was the eldest before.
Mm-hmm.
And with that does bring a different personality.
Mm-hmm.
I've been self-employed most of my adult life. And so, but being active rather than, which I know a lot of people do, and grief is hard.
Yeah.
It's like I did not sit around in my sweats all day long
Mm-hmm.
and cry. And I tried to give myself something to do. Like I working out was one, to just release some of the happy endorphins,
Mm-hmm.
which exercise did. It didn't mean, like you said, I don't have to be crying all the time. I can still be sad, and I can
Yeah.
still be doing stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Attending, cocktail hours with friends,
Yeah.
and laughing with them. It doesn't mean that the pain is gone. It just
Mm-hmm. I,
relief.
I I imagine, Catherine, that the writing of this book was a very big part of your healing journey as well.
Yes, with my family, everybody grieves differently, and
Mm-hmm.
a few times when I would bring up the accident or start to talk about our loved ones that were gone, I had a sister say, "Do you have to bring up Mom, Dad, and Julie all the time? Like, you have to talk about them all the time?" And I thought, yes, I do.
I do.
And if I can't talk about them to my sisters, then writing helped me. It lifted that. It
Yeah.
lightened the burden of not being able to talk about it, typing about it. And, yes, perhaps I didn't have to publish it for the world to see, but through the journey with some of the therapists
Mm-hmm.
and friends that were losing parents during this, because this was 10 years in the making. They were losing their parents and going, "Catherine, I can't wait till your book is done. I want to read it."
Mm-hmm.
Initially, it was going to be, I thought I would do like a self-help book, because once I saw the Reiki clairvoyant, and then I saw this medium and the neuromodulation technique, and I had these different types, and the grief counselors and the groups, I thought, I'm going to write like a self-help book about it. But a self-help book doesn't go into your heart, the reader's heart.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's just a self-help book.
Yeah.
What do I do now? But so I thought, the way they'll believe me is if they can experience some of my pain
Yeah.
and know, and then read, oh, well, then Catherine did this and it did help her. So maybe it'll help me.
And that is very inspiring. And again, there's a lot of bravery that goes into doing that, because you could have taken like you said, a more of a self-help, this is what you do approach. And instead you talk about, this is how you went through the process, and you put it all out there, like you talk about needing that drink, and and the um disconnect with your husband, and how your frustration with your husband, and then again you talk about how he's there to support you, and I love how you weaved reality and the messiness, as I said earlier, and the beauty together, because we're multifaceted. We have so much that's going on for all of us, and we process and deal with things differently, and it's not always pretty. And particularly when life gets really hard, it's definitely not going to be pretty. So I just really want to commend you for taking that really brave step, because there's a lot of people that just, they don't know how to deal with something. I wouldn't have a clue how to deal with something like what you've gone through. And like you, I probably would feel like I need to hold it together and be strong and not show my emotions, and, and be like, I'm that older sister as well, and you take on that role of having everything held together.
Like
And
I'm no angel, but what happened to me that night in the hospital was I immediately went, okay, what do I have to do now? What has to be done now?
mhm,
Everybody else bawling their eyes out.
mhm.
And I'm going, I'm the
Like,
only, like, I got to do something. What do we do?
yeah,
So my grieving was put on hold a bit too. It was just like,
sure.
plan the funeral,
Yeah. Yeah, and there was a lot happening all at once, and you feeling the responsibility to take a lead on that. I want to You talk about in your book how you turn to psychics and mediums. You also allude that that's not typically something you would do, yet you decided to go down that path and give it a try. And I'm really curious. I'm quite intrigued by some of the stories you shared, and I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about that here, and that experience helped or maybe not helped in some cases with your grieving process.
Well, the first, the Reiki clairvoyant, she was called. She was referred to me by a friend who had seen her because she lost her mother suddenly, tragically. That her mother was murdered actually. So,
Oh my gosh.
I was in the, well, yeah, whatever, man.
Yeah.
I'll do what, yes, I'll try, and I'll try anything. Let's go and do it. And oh my God, this woman, Benita, she just, I can tell you some of the things that I heard, but it's only when you hear messages specific to yourself that you'll really believe it, because I have people like my agent calls us hocus pocus,
Mm-hmm.
but just like simple things are deeper things that I'll probably cry if I say, but simple things like, your grandmother's here. She's saying something about raspberry jam cookies. Like, what? My grandmother made these round raspberry jam cookies with molasses, with the hole in the middle where you could see the raspberry jam.
It's very
Like,
specific.
it's very specific.
Yeah.
Oh, and you have an aunt, dear. She's Aunt Joan. Your Aunt Joan is not doing well. I'm going to just backtrack here and say, I did not give my last name to any of the psychics mediums that I saw. And some of them, they don't even believe in Googling. They don't go there. This Benita isn't even on the internet. So when you hear even things like raspberry jam cookies, and you can't look that up on the internet.
Yeah.
And you believe. Another fun one is about my dad taking out his front teeth and putting them on the end of his tongue and clicking them up and down. And, oh, your dad's here. This was a message actually to my sister, but she shared it with me, and we both howled like who, like, you can't make that up,
right? Yeah, that must have brought you a lot of comfort.
Just one other thing too for the listeners or readers. So all of the sessions, all my therapy sessions were recorded except the group session. So it's verbatim. I transferred, everything is verbatim except that it's shortened.
Right.
It's not hocus pocus.
Yeah.
Made up for the book.
Yeah, I was so intrigued by all that. So what is your interpretation now of and has your thoughts about life after death changed at all, or like, where do you stand on that spectrum?
Well, as an example, I do believe in the afterlife, but we have a country house that has windows all the way around, and I would spend a lot of time there alone. And sometimes, looking out there in the darkness, it could be kind of freaky. After my parents died, and after seeing these mediums and knowing they're here, they are here. I have never been afraid since, and I'm not afraid really of anything now. And I'm not afraid of dying. I don't want to die a violent death, but I'm not. And I just, yes, I believe in the afterlife, and I've gotten lots of messages. I became a bit of a medium addict, actually. And
I bet.
I have another one scheduled in 2 weeks.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine there is a lot of comfort in that. We don't know. We don't really can't even comprehend all the possibilities of this universe. I think our understanding is so limited, and there's so much potential, and this idea of life after death really intrigues me and gives me a lot of comfort, and also makes me feel less afraid of death. It's part of the continuum, I guess. And like you, I do seek the wonder. I seek the wonder, and it brings me joy exploring these things as well. So very cool. I want to shift to the advocacy and the fundraising work that you touched on earlier. So you have thrown yourself quite headlong into a number of different things, and I'd love you to talk a little bit more about some of the work that you started and that you continue to do, and the passions that you have around that work, and the awareness you're trying to bring on. And at the end of the show, or rather in the show notes, we'll add some links to some of the things that you're talking about, because I think there's some beautiful work that you're doing here that was sparked because of this tragedy. So please share.
Well, mostly what I have done is the fundraisers for Special Olympics.
Can just for our audience's sake, can you tell us a little more why Special Olympics is so dear to you?
Well, yes, of course, because Julie was a Special Olympics basketball player.
Yeah.
And I had the pleasure of seeing her play twice, and yes, just to seeing the joy, again, using that word, I love that word, of on their faces playing.
Yeah.
I have a cute memory of Julie, it was a practice, and we're in the gym, and my brother Dave walked in, and he was a bit late. He was late, and you know how you sit just on the benches right on the floor right there in the gym.
Yeah.
And he was walking in, and Julie's like, my brother Dave is here. And they stopped playing.
This is in the middle of the game.
Stop, and they're like, hi Dave, hi.
Oh, that's heartwarming.
Yeah, so.
Great. So you started some fundraising for the Special Olympics in honor of your sister, Julie.
Yes, was because what some people don't know is each chapter has to raise their own funds for their own events.
Oh,
So smaller towns might have it a little bit more difficult than the big cities.
right.
So that's why I have specifically said Special Olympics Ontario Kingston, but helping Special Olympics anywhere is a beautiful thing to do.
Yeah. And I love how you've tapped into your resources in the film industry and all that to create the excitement and the awareness, and to bring out some people that want to support the work that you're doing. You know, you're in a really great position to raise the awareness and have so many skills at your, you know, in your back pocket from the years of being a producer, and knowing how you basically, I feel like you've been trained in many ways from your work to do what you're doing now in your advocacy work. So.
Well, the first one, the first fundraiser that I did was the big fancy one. And it was a film industry event, because initially it was, I was starting to organize an event to honor my husband, Don, for producing 100 films. And then the accident happened like a month after we started. So then it waited the full year. And then the co-producer came to me and said, okay, so I'd still really like to do this to honor him. It was his publicist. And I said, well, okay, except he's also going to be turning 60. So I said, I'll help you, but it has to be his birthday party as well. And I wanted all the money to go to Special Olympics.
Great.
We did Special Olympics, but we also, I think it was 15,000 went to the Canadian Film Center scholarship, Don Carmody scholarship as well. So, but that was a big one. But since then I've done 2 in Kingston, but they had just as many people, like 300 people at them, but it wasn't a $300 ticket.
Well, good stuff. And
but it's all to, yes, that old, you know, make something good out of something bad.
yeah. That's beautiful. And you created, or the Special Olympics in Kingston, they created an award for the Olympians in your sister's name. Is that correct?
Yes, to honor Julie, the joy of Julie.
That's right. I
There's your
love it.
joy
I
again.
know. And when you describe your sister and the joy that she had in everything she did, it just lit up my heart as well. In reading about Julie, she just sounds like the most bubbly, amazing woman, and what a blessing to have her in your life, and to, you know, have had that time with her, even though it was short. I understand that, and that is painful. And you are keeping her memory alive, which is so beautiful. So beautiful.
It's fun.
Yeah.
But it's fun. It's worth it.
Yeah. Are you still actively involved with the Special Olympics then?
I am. And actually I can't really publicize the amount yet, but a dear friend of mine passed ours last May. And he had come out to 3 of the Special Olympics fundraisers that I did. He was best man at our wedding. So we've known him a long time, obviously. And I only got the news yesterday. For Special Olympics Ontario emailed me and says, do you know the blah, blah, blah? Anyway, he's given like an enormous donation I'm going to say it like it's not $100 or $1,000. It's a lot
A lot
of money.
more.
So now they're talking to me. What are we going to do with it?
Wow,
So yeah, so I have a meeting with them on the weekend.
how wonderful. What a beautiful ripple effect. Hmm?
Yes, exactly.
Mm.
Like
And
so.
how you can touch so many lives by taking action with something that's important to you. I love it.
Well, again, if you ever have the pleasure of going to a Special Olympics event, like just treat yourself and
Mhm.
you won't
I
regret.
will. I will. That's I want to experience what you're talking about. It sounds pure.
And I
And
still, like, I had already thought once this pandemic was over, yes, we have to do another party. The athletes love music and dancing, and they haven't been able to do that for 2 years.
yeah.
And it takes money to do that, and nobody's
Yeah.
been able to raise money for 2 years.
Yeah.
So without John's generous donation, like I was still planning on trying to do another fundraiser.
Great. So this sounds like the Special Olympics is something that you will continue to stay involved in for a while. Very good. Tell me about some of the other advocacy work you're doing. I know that you were really lobbying to make some changes with the regulations for elder drivers. Do you want to
Yes.
talk a little bit about that?
I would like to say I've done something since,
Okay.
since my original attempt and being interviewed on the Too Old for the Road
Yeah.
episode on the 16:9 show. But now that the book is out there, and now, once we can start to meet people in person, then I would still like to try just make it aware. I mean, when that 16:9 episode aired, I had 3 people, at least 3 or 4, email me or phone me and said, I took the keys away from my dad or my
Mhm.
mom, or my mom hung up her keys after watching
Great.
that show and finding out what happened to this unfortunate 85-year-old woman. That because it's hard on the drivers. They grieve as well. They suffer.
Oh,
If
of course they
it's
do.
an accident, the driver suffers as well.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if we actually mentioned at the beginning, and we may have, that your family was hit by an 85-year-old driver. Yeah. I also want to presence something that you said in the book, that you actually waited until this woman passed before you published this book, because you didn't want to cause any more pain for her, and that you forgave her. I think that's brave. Shows a lot of heart from you.
This is
Um,
a woman just about, so she was 84, she was turning 85 in 7 weeks. And I found out through a friend of their family that her family had asked her to hang up her keys, and she said, I will when I'm 85.
right. Yeah. 7 weeks too late. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have any tips on language that we can use to talk to our family members, or anything you can share with us that can help us have that conversation? Because that's a really awkward, uncomfortable conversation to have, and an important one. And the idea of taking away some freedoms from our parents can be very upsetting. Yet the consequences are so huge if they're not, if they shouldn't be driving. And I don't know, maybe you might not have something that you can share with us, but I thought I'd throw
Well,
that out.
I didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
But again, just an example, another friend of mine gave my book to her mother.
That's a great idea.
Her mother said, I know why you gave me this book now, because
Mhm.
she's 87 and still driving, and she didn't want her mother to drive. So then she didn't have to have the conversation. The mother went, okay, I get it. I'm
Yeah.
not anymore.
I've had this sort of a conversation. I've shared this book and the interview I'm having with you with my mother-in-law, who she's she has some eye issues, and when her eyes are great, they're great. And when they're not, they're not. So I was just suggesting that she may need to consider at a time to put the keys away entirely. And I felt really awkward and uncomfortable saying that. And at the same time, like just sharing the consequences of what happened with your family. It's just maybe that's, like you said, maybe that's just it's a good way to have the conversation, is to hand people this book and yeah, just share that, because it's pretty devastating what can happen if you're.
Yeah, no, she was never the same either.
Yeah, I can't imagine taking somebody's life. Oh. Hmm. Any words of wisdom that you can leave with our audience, anybody that has gone through grief, anything that you have particularly done that has helped you more than other things in your healing journey?
Well, it when grief is sudden, like I believe that's the worst. This
Mm,
sudden death is, I can't describe how bad that feels. But although in the beginning, it's extremely difficult to accept. I think like once the shock and the devastation, once you've kind of moved on from your shock zone, I would say to try your best to choose to celebrate your loved ones
mm,
instead of it's their birthday. Oh, it's their birthday, and I'm crying because he's not here for the birthday.
mhm.
Try to celebrate by getting a cake. Um, we're drinkers. We're part Irish. They drink what they like. For example, my dad, on my dad's birthday and Father's Days, I have a beer. I'm not a real beer drinker, but I'm like, hey, Dad, having a beer for you. I sing to them on their birthdays. It doesn't have to be birthdays, but or like I said, I made the collage, do things
To celebrate them.
to celebrate their life.
Yeah.
Try. They don't want us to be crying and sad for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
I would say try to find the strength to be thankful for the time that you had with them, and honor them, and still keep talking because they can hear you.
Yeah.
Talk.
Lovely.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't have to go to a medium to have a conversation. You can just step
Yes.
outside, or I don't know, while you're making dinner or whatever, have your conversation, right? Beautiful. Catherine, thank you so much. If people wanted to pick up a copy of your book, how do they do that?
Well, they can go to my website to catherinegourdier.com. In Canada, it's available at Chapters Indigo across Canada. It was released last year, and it was in most bookstores across Canada. Or it's at the Behemoth, you know who that is, Amazon, through Amazon.
That's where I got my copy.
In fact, it's Amazon in the UK and the US and Australia. I heard from somebody from Australia.
Great. So
That's-
it's getting some traction out there. That's really fantastic. Good.
Try to support bookstores when you can, but otherwise.
Good stuff. All right, Catherine, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story with us and coming here on the Joyful Journey podcast and opening up your heart and you are inspiring. So thank you for all that you've contributed with the writing of this book. No.
Thank you. And your joyful note. So yeah, so try to turn your grief journey into a joyful journey.
Yeah. Thanks, Catherine. And thank you, Joyful Journeyers, for tuning in. We'll include links to how to connect with Catherine in the show notes and her website and how to find her book. And please, if you know anybody that needs to hear this podcast, share share it with your friends and family, and leave us a review. It goes a long way in helping us to reach more people. And on that note, have an amazing day, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.